I think it's also interesting if you hop in and look specifically about what does that trade look like. That's been evolving over time. And I'll talk a little bit about the Sherryland plantation a little bit later, but when we first converted it into a mixed-use facility, our first tenants were a bingo card manufacturing company and a vacuum cleaning company. And we were very pleased and proud to have them as tenants. But I think in a lot of ways, people have tended to think of a lot of the cross-border trade as being in that segment of industry. And in fact, actually, the trends are changing and evolving in a way that are much healthier for both sides than that. If you really start breaking down where a lot of the growth in the industrial side of our relationship is coming from, it's coming from higher-end goods. It's coming from, obviously, the automobile manufacturing that's occurring on both sides of the border. But you have electrical machinery, you have telecom and sound recording that have actually grown considerably over time when you contrast it to office or automated data processing machines, for instance. So you aren't just seeing an increase in the volume of trade, you're actually seeing a change in the kind of products that we're sending back and forth. And again, that's a positive trend for both countries. So in summary, I really think that maquilas have transformed the manufacturing industry in the U.S. It is a completely different model today in U.S. manufacturing than what it was before. It's obviously had a massive impact in Mexico as well. But on the U.S., it's boosting our population, employment, and output growth. Again, as maquilas have come, as jobs have come on the Mexican side of the border, it's driving U.S. growth as well. And it's not just employment growth, it's also wages as well. For all the hits that Texas is taking for creating poor quality jobs, which I'm a little mystified in terms of creating jobs is typically a good thing in general, we're actually increasing the wages with NAFTA as well. So again, overall, this is a trend I don't see reversing itself. I think more and more you're going to see the nexus and the power center of industry in this country move into the border region. And then finally, I want to talk about energy and renewable energy. And quite frankly, part of the reason why the Hunt Organization and Energy Company is so excited about the border region is this is the breadbasket of renewable energy for the United States and frankly for Mexico as well, although Mexico's development has been a little bit further behind, although we'll talk about that just a little bit. This map is a map of the wind resources in the United States, and the more red or purplish you get, the better. And not too surprisingly, it's windy in the Great Plains, which I think we all knew. Kind of honing in on Texas, though, the intriguing part about the wind in Texas is, in eastern New Mexico, is it's high quality, but it's also closer to growing markets. Put differently, if you're in North Dakota, you have Chicago, and that's kind of it in terms of a major market where if you develop a large wind resource, it's a market big enough to take all the output of your product. When you look at wind in Texas and eastern New Mexico, the lower Great Plains, you actually have a number of growing metropolitan statistical areas. You have Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin. The holy grail for a lot of folks has been Los Angeles and Southern California. And so you're actually closer to a lot of markets that can use the wind. And I haven't even uttered Juarez or Nogales or areas south of the border where, again, a lot of the industrial growth is going on down there as well. So you've had a lot of renewable energy in the form of wind development going on in Texas and eastern New Mexico. It's not limited to the U.S. side, though. Mexico is definitely getting into the act. Of interest for those in the wind industry, Oaxaca is kind of viewed not as a gold standard, but the platinum standard of wind. If you like North Dakota, you would love Oaxaca. But if you look at the border region, actually, there's a lot of activity going on building wind farms in the border region. And this is both a directive of CFE that wants to boost its percentage of renewable energy, that they want to maintain some semblance of the distribution of energy resources that the U.S. has. But obviously, it's also focused as well as potentially there's a U.S. market to sell into. So you can see a lot of activity going on in Baja California, but you also have it going on in the border states as well. So both sides are getting into the act on this. If we hop over to solar, as you move west across the border region, again, this is a map of the solar resources in the U.S., and I'm still mystified as to why New Jersey is doing so well in solar. Just looking at the map, it speaks to the power of tax credits. But if you look at the raw resource, again, the desert Southwest is a fabulous place to be. And again, you're seeing a lot of activity going on. And just one last point here. This solar resource doesn't stop. It doesn't know the border is there. And so actually, as you cross the border, there are fabulous solar resources in Mexico. Those are currently not being developed in the same way that wind is being developed. And that's a function of the cost of solar as it sits today and government policies, because solar is behind wind and frankly requires more credits or government directives to incorporate it. But I would bet that over time you're going to see a lot more activity in Mexico as well. Hop into the U.S. side, again, without going into a lot of detail. Shockingly, most of the major solar projects are actually located in the desert Southwest. And California is home to a good portion of them. They have a number of policies that are strongly encouraging renewables, and particularly solar, to be part of their mix. But you have a very healthy dose of solar activity in Arizona and New Mexico, certainly compared to the size of the market. And Texas, which is really a laggard in promoting solar, in part because of our success with wind, is also getting into the act as well. So a lot of very positive things going on in utility scale, large scale solar projects. The final piece of the renewable puzzle for our neighborhood is geothermal. And geothermal is the furthest behind. You can see that there are a lot of projects that have been developed over time in California and Nevada, but all you have to do is just kind of hone in a little bit, and there's a healthy market here too. And the benefits of geothermal are it works when the sun ain't shining and when the wind isn't blowing. Or put differently, if the earth isn't hot 24 hours a day, we're in trouble. So it's a good renewable resource. It's a little more expensive than others right now, and it's attractive to an oil company because it's reservoir management, drilling holes, and then it's pumps and pipes above ground. But the cost structure is just not there yet, but it's coming. And so I think when you sum these three up together, it is a very, very bright future in the border region for renewable energy. So in summary, these three major trends, the demographic growth that's going on, both the indigenous growth with folks, with local folks here, as well as people that want to get in on the good news story that's going on in the border region, is clearly, it's clearly growing and it's unabated. If you look at the industrial growth, again, there is nothing that would cause you to sit there and say, this is going to slow down at all. And if you look at renewable energy, you can't get any better than the border region. These are three major megatrends over the 21st century that are propelling the growth. And I think it's part of what makes the border so special. Frankly, it's part of the reason why you've had Secretary Chu come here and address this conference before. It is critical that we get this right. But the key ingredient to support these moving forward, because these are fabulous trends, but frankly, a lot of times, a lot of growth implodes due to poor planning, and the number one element that we really need to nail is infrastructure. Without the infrastructure to support these three trends, it will slow down. It could either be the Achilles heel of the region, or it could be the catalyst that really propels it forward, and obviously we fall much more in the catalyst category. Let me talk briefly. I hate commercials when people stand up and they talk about a theme through their company, so I won't do that other than talking about a lot of the things we screwed up. But let me talk a little bit about how we got involved in the border and what some of our experiences. As I mentioned before, Sharyland became part of our family's holdings back in 1974, actually, when my grandfather passed away, and my father inherited it when they were divvying up assets amongst family members. And he held on to it thinking it's 6,000 acres, it's in Mission and McAllen, Texas, and he figured 6,000 acres on the Rio Grande River in the border region has got to be worth something more than farmland at some point in time. And so, as I said, we very unsuccessfully farmed it for close to 25 years. We grew the Aggie onions, the 1015 onions, we tried our hand at sugar, we've done various things. But in 1998, the McAllen Economic Development Corporation came to us and said, look, now is really the time to start developing this into something else. And so that's when we got serious about turning it into a mixed-use development. And in 10 short years, this is what it looks like. Now, you can take the back part of the photo. About half of those industrial buildings fall within our property. About half actually fall within the McAllen Free Trade Zone. But you can see in 10 years' time, it's been an incredible journey. And again, I'm telling you what you already know. For those that are involved in property development along the border region, it's been an incredibly good news story. As I mentioned, it is 6,000 acres. It straddles two cities. Today we have almost a little over 18,050 residential homes with pricing points ranging from $160,000 to $1 million. Of interest, we thought you'd see a lot more demand in the affordable housing segment because, frankly, we carry our North Texas stereotypes into it. We've seen demand across the border. It's been phenomenal, the amount of mid-pricing point housing as well as upper-end housing that we've had. It's surprised us all. We have around 4 million square feet of Class A industrial space in the business park. It is your usual cast of characters that are in there: Black & Decker, Corning, GE, Motorola, Panasonic. T-Mobile's customer care center, their call center, it's actually their #1 performing center anywhere in their fleet, which is a testament to the workforce that we have in the border region. And then finally, as you can see, the market value of land, we started with a $14 million farm in 1998. The estimated market value is today just kind of shy of $1 billion. I will be very quick to point out that we sell our land and other people improve it. So it would be great if this were ours. It is shared amongst many. But it's been a wonderful value creation model for the folks that live in Hidalgo County, which is one of the poorest counties in Texas. As part of that infrastructure story, as you saw, that required roads, it required telecom infrastructure, it required a number of things. We actually had a co-op that served part of our territory, and we had an investor-owned utility that served the other part, and Texas is moving into a deregulated market for investor-owned utilities. So we thought it would make sense to master plan the community to serve all 6,000 acres. We didn't think it made sense that depending on which side of the street you were on in a business park, you either had one set of tariffs and one competitive supply situation or something different. So we created Sharyland Utilities in 1999 solely to serve our Sharyland plantation. We energized our first customer in February of 2000. It was a softball field. I think we're the only utility in the country that peaked 3 times a week at night. And if we were lucky enough to score the All-Valley softball tournaments, we actually peaked on a Saturday as well. So it was a very humble start. I think we missed the peak of the NASDAQ by a month. A very bad time to energize a very capital-intensive utility. But it's worked out reasonably well for us. Today we have around 2,500 customers in the valley. I think more importantly, as we looked across Texas, we realized actually there are a lot of infrastructure needs in the utility space, and it doesn't just stop at Texas. It goes elsewhere in the border region. So it's been a priority of ours to grow Sharyland, and today we serve 42,000 customers in 29 counties, and we're looking to expand that. One of the marquee projects that we've done, and frankly one of the things that has helped, it's been a great calling card for us, was we built an interconnection with Mexico to connect the Texas electric grid with the Mexican electric grid. It is the first commercial-sized DC interconnection anywhere up and down the border area. There was a small DC interconnection that was built that's 38 megawatts that was viewed as experimental at the time. And then AEP put in a variable frequency transformer, a very specialized piece of equipment that supports cross-border trade in Laredo. But this was the first one where the justification was cross-border trade that the commission signed off on. We energized that back in 2007. It got off to a slow start because, frankly, both market participants on either side of the border weren't quite sure how to interact. But today it's being actively used, both by CFE as well as a lot of traders and utilities in Texas. And we're currently looking to expand that to 300 megawatts, and I'll get into that a little bit more.